This is Retiring Today, the podcast that guides you to and through retirement. I am Molly Nelson, host of the podcast, here with Loren Merkle and Clint Huntrods. Clint is an investment advisor representative. Loren is a certified financial planner, a certified financial fiduciary, and a retirement income certified professional. Today, we want to talk about 3 ways to overcome fear of running out of money in retirement. In high school, we loaded up the Park Avenue for an epic road trip west. We left Iowa en route for Washington, had an AAU basketball tournament, but on the way, we stopped in Yellowstone. So you drive around Yellowstone, it's beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous, but you know what happens in Yellowstone? A couple of things. It gets dark at night, like real dark.
And dark and scary, because, you got bears in Yellowstone.
There are bears in Yellowstone, and did I mention we were in a vehicle? And you know what vehicles run on, guys?
Gasoline.
Gas.
Vehicles run on gasoline, and sometimes tanks get low. And you know what's a really bad combination? Being in the middle of Yellowstone and your gas tank getting low.
There aren't many gas stations, as I recall, in the entire park.
That is how I recall this story from my high school years as well. So I recall that we were driving through Yellowstone, it was getting dark, the gas stations were closed, and we were running out of gas. And I also recall my father saying a few choice words as we tried to figure it out. The story has a somewhat happy ending. No bears, attacks, no sleeping on the ground in Yellowstone. As I recall, we found a deputy or sheriff of sorts to drive us to a gas station and somehow maybe get someone to open it up for us, or he knew of one that was open. But we still talk about how that was not the highlight of the trip through Yellowstone.
No, but when you think back about that trip, that's probably the thing that always comes to mind because of the emotions that you were going through that wild night in Yellowstone, which if the deputy didn't find you, you could have been stranded for maybe
Did
potentially.
you have a tent to stay overnight?
Oh, there was no tent.
The question is, even if you had a tent, would you want a tent?
There'd be a lot of noises at night in Yellowstone.
We had no tent. My brother, I think, was 3 years old, and we were trying to find a motel or hotel of some sort. And after we got the gas, thankfully we did. And if my dad was sitting here, he would say that wasn't his best moment as the driver, as the person leading the family through Yellowstone, because he didn't prepare. He wasn't prepared for when the gas stations closed, didn't have enough gas to get us through there. And I know that he's not very proud of that moment.
Well, it seems like such a simple oversight. I mean, the last time you guys passed a gas station, because I do remember Yellowstone, there's gas stations right on the outside. I don't know if there are, Clint,
Maybe
on the
one
inside.
in the center?
But certainly on the outside. So as you're driving into Yellowstone, looking at the gas gauge, saying maybe I'm a quarter to the way empty, maybe an eighth, there's a gas station. Shouldn't I stop and get something? No, I'll just keep driving. It'll be fine. It will work out. And there is a significant difference when we're talking about anything in life of hoping that something's going to work out versus planning, being prepared, and increasing your probability that something's going to work out. This reminds me a lot of the conversations that we have with families we meet with for the very first time when they're talking about how they feel about going to this next phase of their life, which is the retirement phase, and how they don't feel prepared. And it's a little bit worse than maybe running out of gas, because you know what you can do to prevent running out of gas.
Right.
You just fill up the tank. But when we're talking about being prepared for retirement, a phase of life that most people have never done before, where do you even start? How do you become prepared to make this transition that's going to last forever, the rest of your life? And there's so many different moving parts and so many different decisions that you've never had to make before. And that is the challenge that pre-retirees are faced with as they make to look at that change to this next journey of their life.
Yeah, and the fear of running out of money is one that pops up a lot in the surveys that different institutions do. It's something that pre-retirees point out to, but it's not just the surveys. It's not just a feeling they have. It's looking at some of the statistics that are out there too. Fidelity looked at 401ks in 2022. The average 401k dropped 23%. That's scary.
Yeah, and you just never know what's coming next in retirement, and that's one thing that we have really are fortunate to be able to do, is to walk families through the different risks that they should be thinking about. And I was just kind of lost in the story that you're talking about with Yellowstone, is I remember going there, and if I didn't have GPS and the technology that I do today, I never would have guessed how big and how vast Yellowstone was. without having some of that technology or a guide that was with me. And I was likening or thinking about that related to retirement, is if you've never been there before, you maybe don't realize how big, how vast it is, what all kinds of risks may be there when you maybe haven't had to experience that before during your working years.
And then you go through a year like last year where the NASDAQ was down 34%, the S&P 500 was down 20 on average, according to Fidelity. Most people were down 23% in their 401k plans. The bond markets blew up, the stock markets blew up. Where do you go? You're stuck maybe on the cusp of wanting to retire, and now you have this finite amount of resources that you have to find a way to make last for the rest of your life, and you've never had to do that before. So where do you go? How do you maneuver through that type of situation? And in many cases, people feel like they are on an island without the guide or the assistance to get them through.
Yeah, one more factor to add to the fear is inflation. 2022 ended up at, 6.5% for an annual inflation increase.
And historical interest rate increases. And, of course, those two things are related. So you see your portfolio drop by maybe 20, 30%. You see your household expenses or your monthly expenses just to live increase by maybe 15 to 25%. So you feel like you're getting sandwiched from both sides, and that just adds to this complexity and this confusion. The good news is, though, is that when all the families and individuals that we work with have a retirement plan, and that retirement plan addresses what do you do to prevent when the markets do blow up like what we saw last year, your portfolio from blowing up. How do you use your portfolio to deliver consistent and dependable income in the years that you don't have W-2 income coming in and you have to rely upon your investment resources and your Social Security resources, maybe a pension? How do you mitigate the impact of the retirement tax bill that inevitably you're going to have on an annual basis, and that can add up to a 6 to even 7-figure sum over the course of a 25-year time horizon? How do you address all of these things? And throughout all of the bad stuff that took place last year, and even this year, we had a number of people, a number of families and individuals retire in the midst of all that. And not only did they retire, but they retired with a sense of anticipation because they were thinking about all this time now that they're going to be able to spend with their grandkids and traveling, maybe going to Yellowstone.
With a full tank of gas.
With a full tank of gas.
And GPS. I will say back when I was in high school, guys, it was so long ago that there was no GPS.
That reminds me, there also wasn't cell phones.
We did not have a cell phone.
That was
with
back
us.
in the day where there was pay phones, and I remember stopping to make calls at a pay phone, looking for the next pay phone, dropping the change in the pay phone and dialing the numbers that we had memorized, right? It's just a completely different time frame. Now there's so many more tools and resources that we have available to us, not only when we need to make a phone call, but we're not using maps, we're using GPSs, and we have a retirement plan at our disposal to get us through all these challenging times as we go to and through retirement.
Yeah, Loren, there's a family that we just started working with, and when they first came to us, it's a single woman, and she's in her 70s, and she just basically said, over the last couple of years, as the market's been volatile, as inflation's going up, I don't think I'll ever be able to retire. And through working with us and getting started, we were able to build out a plan where at the end of this, she's able to see the light where she can say, okay, I can see tangibly retirement on my radar in my future, rather than just saying, I'm going to work until my body can't anymore. Now she's saying, okay, I can actually see how I could possibly do this, and this plan can allow me to do it with confidence that I know I've got my finances in order, where I'm not riding the market volatility and thinking about having to come out of retirement if the market goes down or having to cut back on my lifestyle, but a plan that can smooth out those rough waters that are likely ahead in the market as it's been relatively volatile and likely will continue to be so. Through the plan, she was able to see that future, and it was really bright.
Yeah, what a great experience to sit across from somebody and show them that. Because one of the studies I read said that 48% of retired Americans in one survey said they believe that they will outlive their money. But you guys know it doesn't have to be that way.
Yes, nearly half the people do feel like they're going to run out of money before they run out of time, until they actually get to see what their long-term retirement prospects look like. Clint, the story that you told right there is such a common and familiar story with a lot of people who come to us for the very first time. And you know what? Our role in that whole thing is that individual, she's the one that did the hard work. She's the one that saved the money to put herself in a position to be able to retire one day. She was uncertain. She had fear because it wasn't organized. And this is what we see with most people is they have this junk drawer full of investments that's kind of scattered all over the place. They don't know how to put together a retirement plan. But once they see that plan in writing and they can see at point of retirement that they can receive $6,000 a month from their investments, they're going to maximize their Social Security with this particular strategy. And not only can they receive the income that they need at point of retirement, regardless of what the market does, they're also going to be just fine from an income standpoint 5 years later, 10 years later. And what happens if they need a long-term care situation or if they run into a healthcare scare? This is how they're going to pay for that, and they're still going to be okay even after that type of event from a financial standpoint. Once they see that, they realize that actually they've done a pretty good job, and it's a matter of organizing it and putting some strategies in place to propel them to where they're going now.
If you can relate to some of the fears that we're talking about, I've got a great opportunity for you. It's a 15-minute retirement checkup call. This is a chance to talk directly with a retirement planner about what's on your mind. You can talk about your fears. You can come with very specific questions, or you can just have a conversation. Our retirement planners are really good about asking you where you're at and where you want to go. Go to merkleretire.com. When you get there, there'll be a calendar. You can choose a time and a date that works for you and schedule your 15-minute retirement checkup call today. Okay, guys, we promised people 3 things they can do to overcome these fears. So let's get to the first one. Understand what you have. Clint, I suspect that was the first step you took with the woman you were just talking about.
Yeah, so we really just start with an inventory. Let's take an inventory of what it is that we have. We've got maybe an IRA, we've got a 401k. We can start to look at the tax classification of some of those different retirement assets that you've saved so well for. And then we start to look at what other avenues do you have to provide you with income in retirement. Have you logged into SSA.gov, figured out what your estimated Social Security benefits look like? If you have a pension, what kind of options might you have with that pension? And then we can start to dive in deeper on current investment strategy. Where are some opportunities that maybe you can do things a little bit better, not just ride the highest highs and the lowest lows of the market, especially if you need to take income from that in the near term, and just really that overall inventory and assessment of what do you have, and then we can start to shape some strategies and build a plan around that.
What are the biggest surprises that people find during this part of the process?
The biggest surprise that people find is how much risk are they actually taking in their overall portfolio? So as Clint mentioned, we do an inventory, we assess what their junk drawer of investments look like, we organize them, and then how much risk are you taking, which means when the market does go through what we went through in 2022, how much money is your portfolio going to be down? If you have $1 million portfolio and the NASDAQ's down 34, the S&P's down 20, are you going to be down 300,000? 250,000, and whatever that number is for you in your portfolio, how is that going to impact what you're trying to accomplish from a retirement planning standpoint? Is it going to disrupt your lifestyle? Is it going to make you come out of retirement if you're already retired? Is it going to postpone your retirement if you're wanting to retire in the next 12 to 18 months? What kind of impact is it going to have on your actual financials? But then maybe even more importantly is what kind of impact is that going to have on you emotionally? If you lose $250,000 of your $1 million within a 12-month period of time on the cusp of retiring, is that going to create way too much anxiety for you? Or are you going to be comfortable with that? And those are all the things that we need to take a look at now that you're on the doorsteps of retiring. And this is different. This is completely different than 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when you were 45 years old and you were thinking about retiring at 65, you have a 20-year time horizon. So when we went through 2008 and your portfolio was down 40%, you weren't happy. There was anxiety because the whole world seemed kind of crazy, but you also knew you had 20 years left to recoup and then still build upon. Now that you're on the doorsteps of retirement, if you're down 40%, then it could change the direction of your retirement plan, and it could have way more emotional anxiety. It could create a much more emotional anxiety type environment for you because you do have these goals that are just around the corner as opposed to 2 decades out.
And what's the timeline on this? Because I'm thinking about the woman that came in her 70s, and clearly you were able to help her. You sat across from the table with her and have a great testimonial about that. But I got to think some people listening are going, well, I'm 65. It is what it is. I am where I am. There's not much I can do right now. When's the best time to start thinking about making some of these changes?
Yeah, we always say 5 to 10 years out from retirement is a great time to start to look and see what opportunities are there to be proactive and get ahead of some of these things so that we're not waiting until you're 2 weeks out from turning in your notice and you're planning on retiring. But what can we get in place and have that plan so that when you go to retire, you can do that with confidence. So we always say 5 to 10 years out can be good. And the one thing that I would just say is as Loren mentioned, sometimes risk is one of the things that is the biggest surprise. I would just say in every plan, that's some of the fun that we have and the opportunity that we have is to figure out what is it that is maybe something you weren't expecting. And so it might be that you're getting company stock through your 401k, and now you're heavily concentrated in one position, and you're taking a lot more risk than you realize, just because that one company's going to make or break your retirement. And so these are all opportunities. You just never know what it's going to be, but that's what we can help you to walk through, understand, and then talk about how we can be proactive in mitigating some of these risks before you turn off that traditional paycheck and are relying entirely on the pension, the Social Security, and the other assets that you've saved.
So 5 to 10 years is ideal, but clearly 70 is not too late.
It's never too late. We can always look at what opportunities are available in your plan and work to maximize across the board for the future.
Because even when you're 75, 80 years old, there's going to be strategies that you can implement. There's going to be strategies that you probably should implement. Legislation is one of those things that's constantly changing. And so you're 80 years old and they change the amount that you have to distribute from your IRA, or they change the tax code. So the amount of taxes that you're going to owe on that changes and could increase. So there's always something that you can do to enhance the situation that you're in. So it's never too late, and we would contend it's never too early. The right time to start planning is right now, the place that you're in.
And you never know what opportunities you might miss by waiting just a little bit further. So every December 31 that goes by that you don't have a tax plan, there might be some sort of window of opportunity that you've missed that maybe isn't going to come back. We know that tax rates are currently at historically low rates. Doesn't feel that way when you have that money taken out of your paycheck or you pay your tax bill at the end of the year. But we know that rates are likely to go up here in the next few years. And so every year that goes by that you haven't implemented some of these tax strategies, that window might have closed. There'll still be opportunities in the future, but some of the ones that are available to you today may not be there 3 years from now.
Well, when I think about being in your 70s, I think about required minimum distributions too. Those are either coming for you or you've already had to start taking them, and that may feel like a big, oh, I've got to take this much. I didn't realize it was more, it was less. It's creating a tax problem. There's stuff right there in your 70s.
And this person that I was referring to earlier, they're very charitably inclined, and they had never heard of QCDs, where they can take some of the money that they're required to take out for required minimum distributions and send it directly to the charity of their choice, which can be a more efficient way in their overall plan to distribute those dollars to the beneficiaries or the charities that they're so interested in.
Yeah, and you can still do that before RMDs kick in, right? You can do that at 70 or 70 and a half.
70 and a half is when the door opens up. So she was within that window, but she had never heard of that before, never heard of that strategy. And so that was something that she was super interested in implementing right away.
Number 2, understand what you need. Loren, does this require a crystal ball?
It certainly does not, and we're very lucky for that because last time I checked, none of us really have a crystal ball. But I can tell you the picture can be much more clear once we figure out what you have. So that was step 1. Step 2, now let's determine what you actually need. So if you have an inventory of the different income producing assets, we can determine how much income that is going to produce on a monthly, annual basis. Does that fit what you actually need? You probably have some lifestyle dreams, whatever those dreams are for you, and those lifestyle dreams are going to cost you some money. So we can determine, approximately how much is that going to cost you on a monthly, annual basis, where we're going to get the income from, and then what is that going to do to you short-term and long-term. So part of this, in one of the strategies that a lot of our families and individuals that we work with use, is they test drive their retirement, which means you're 12 months out from retirement. You have a good feeling that you're going to need $7,000 a month to live on from all of the income resources that you have. Live on $7,000 a month. Most people are not living on the amount they feel like they're going to need once the W-2 wages go away.
Is it more or less?
Most people are living on more than what they feel they're going to need once they do retire, which if you think about it, the days of the week that you spend the most money right now are probably the 2 days of the week you don't work, and for most people that's weekends. In retirement, 7 days a week, you're not going to work. You have a lot more free time. That free time is going to be filled by something. A lot of times, the something that is filled by is going to cost you money. So especially in the go-go years of your retirement, it is not uncommon for people to actually spend more than what they were spending when they were working and they only had a couple days free a week. So that is something that you want to test drive. If you think it's 7 or 8 or 5, whatever that number is for you, live on that amount and see how that feels. Is that an adequate lifestyle for you? Is that fulfilling for you? If it is, you're in a pretty good position, assuming that your resources can provide that for you at retirement. If not, well, you're not retired yet. And that means we got more planning to do. What is that real number? And then where's it going to come from? And is it sustainable?
Yeah, one of my favorite questions is, what do you want retirement to look like? Is when we're meeting with families for the first time, and that will start to give us insight. Well, I want to take a certain number of trips per year, and then we can ultimately build in, as part of that lifestyle expense plan, here's exactly what we're looking for there. The things are going to change over the years as well. And so we can predict some of those things. We don't have a crystal ball, but if you're 2 years away from paying your mortgage off, now all of a sudden your expense is going to change dramatically here in just a couple of years. We can build that into the plan as best we know what the reality of the picture looks like today, once we know kind of what your retirement looks like. And anything else that we can identify is, in the near term, going to alter and shape what you need to live your monthly life.
And I'm thinking about the fear of running out of money, and we identified a few of those fears, and we talked about inflation. So how do you help people understand how inflation is going to impact their retirement income, and also ease the fear of what we've seen for really historically high inflation?
We project out what inflation could do to your spendable resources, how much it can erode it, and then where you're going to fill that gap from the other resources that you do have. That's also going to coincide well with your investment plan of how do we grow the investments, account for taxation, and account for inflation, all within your investment strategy. And if we're missing any one of those three within your investment strategy, it is not going to work out well for you long term. And that's what we see with many people who are looking to enter retirement, is they're not taking into consideration all three of those factors. They might be considering inflation and growing it a little bit, but maybe not the impact of taxation. They might be considering the impact of taxation and growing it, maybe not the impact of inflation. We have to account for all three of those. And then once we account for those within the overall investment plan, then we account for it and build it into the income plan. So 5 years down the road, when you're the same lifestyle you're living today is going to cost you 10%, 15%, 20%, whatever that number is, what's going to cost you more, you know this is where we're going to deliver that extra income for the same lifestyle that you have right now. And then that can ease the fears, because you know you have a plan, you can see the plan. These are the different moving parts to help accomplish some of the complexities of that you're going through right now. And once you see that, it does decrease the overall anxiety, because now you know you're not just hoping.
Yeah, it's no longer the fear of the unknown, which sometimes can be the scariest thing that we face. And that plan starts to give us long-term information that can help us with the short-term decisions that are in front of us. In many cases, the plan will show you, hey, I can spend actually a little bit more, or maybe I need to spend a little bit less. But on your own, you wouldn't necessarily be able to determine that or figure that out. So when we have that plan built and we've got that long-term information, that can really help us for some of these more shorter-term decisions that are in front of us, such as figuring out what do we want our lifestyle to look like, what's feasible, what's reasonable. And again, in many cases, sometimes families see that for the first time, that the plan will tell us and give us a lot of the answers and insights.
Another thing I think has to scare people as they head into retirement is medical expenses. We talk about inflation. We know that healthcare costs go up at a higher rate than general inflation.
And it doesn't matter if you're pre-65 or post-65. Medicare is expensive for many people, and the open market healthcare system is expensive for a lot of people. So that has to be an integral part of the plan. And ideally, you'll want to know what type of healthcare system is going to be best for you prior to making that transition to retirement. A lot of people now retiring prior to age 65 are using COBRA to kind of bridge that gap if they're 63 and a half or beyond, or even if they retire at 60, having COBRA for 18 months can be the least expensive route for many people. But whatever those options are available to you, having information at your disposal as far as what kind of coverage are you going to be able to have, and then what kind of cost of the healthcare is going to erode your spendable income, all of that is very valuable information to help you make these decisions that you're going to have to make.
And we know that those expenses are going to be out there. That's why we build into your healthcare plan. Let's say that we do need to go on the open market for 3 years before we are able to be Medicare eligible. We can build that into your plan, and that's where retirement planners are working side by side with Anna Marie Morrow, who's our Director of Healthcare and Medicare, to make sure that what we're thinking about from an income planning standpoint or from an investment standpoint, from a tax planning standpoint, does fit within the overall healthcare plan. And so we're able to go back and forth to determine, hey, maybe we want to implement this tax strategy this year, but because of the way that we're getting healthcare and how that premium is determined, maybe we're going to hold off this year. And so that's where we talk about not making a decision for your healthcare plan without thinking about the cascading effects that it's going to have on the rest of your retirement plan. So making sure that your plan is dialed in all of these different aspects to ensure that you're set up for success. Again, we can't prepare and plan for everything, but we do know a lot of the different things that you're going to experience those first few years after retirement, especially if you're thinking about gap healthcare to get you to Medicare eligibility. And then once you're there, again, we're thinking about IRMA and wanting to make sure that we're always being aware of implementing different income and tax strategies with making sure that it fits in with your overall healthcare plan.
We're talking about 3 ways to overcome your fear of running out of money in retirement. So we've talked about understand what you have. Number 2, understand what you need. And this third one, guys, is make peace with your money worries. And Loren and Clint, you've both seen it. Doesn't matter what people have saved up. It doesn't matter what their investments are. This is a challenge for a lot of people.
Everybody has fear. Everybody has concerns. They might be different things. And so you might be more worried about taxes, or you might be worried about how much do I have from a retirement asset standpoint. But at the end of the day, the making peace is that you have a plan, you have an understanding of what it is that you have, what it is that you're looking to accomplish for retirement success. What does that mean to you? What strategies can we employ to help you achieve that? And then once you have that plan, it doesn't mean it's going to flip a switch, although sometimes we see that, and we see an actual emotional response when somebody sees their plan for the first time or gets it delivered to the binder to take home for the first time, and they do have an emotional response because they trust in, have confidence in that overall plan. But it's one of those things that it's step by step. We're going to see what it is that we have, and then once we can kind of understand that better and understand the plan and roadmap going forward, we trust that we're on a strong path forward.
And it's this whole make peace with the money worries is why we developed our 3-step process. The first step is basically we connect. We connect with the families and individuals who come to talk to us for the very first time and just see what their life is like now. Where do they want to go? What's their starting point? And figure out what their fears, their worries, their concerns really are. And then the next step is where we strategize and we say, based on where you're at right now and where you want to go, here's some real strategy opportunities that you have. Here's what you should be looking at from an income deliverance standpoint when you do retire. It is going to be okay if you retire a year from now and you can deliver the income. Here's what it's going to look like. Maybe you shouldn't retire a year from now. Maybe it should be more like 18 months or 24 months, but at least you know, and there's some strategies that you can implement implement to help you retire better 18 to 24 months down the road. Here's some of the ways that you can mitigate the impact of taxes on your overall retirement plan. The strategy session is all about here's where you are, here's where you say you want to go, and then here's different strategies you can implement to help get yourself there. And then the third step is the planning step. And this is the fun for most people, because for the very first time, people get to see what their retirement picture looks like. You would get to see, here's how much income you can afford to spend right away. Here's how much income you can afford to spend and not have to worry about running out of income later down the road. Here's how you do account for your health care plan. Here's what specific health care coverage you receive. Here's how much it would cost you. All the different things that go into a retirement plan, you actually get a visual to look at it, and that can alleviate the worries and really help you have peace with a lot of these concerns that you have right now.
Yeah, it's kind of like if we would have traveled through Yellowstone with maybe like a map that said where the gas stations were, maybe the hours of the gas station. Just think, that would have been smooth sailing through Yellowstone.
But just think, you wouldn't be talking about it today. But yes, that's exactly it. I mean, imagine a family, your family, all the stress that was going. I mean, you said your dad was throwing out curse words. Your mom was probably not having fun. You kids in the back probably didn't really understand what's going on, but you knew it wasn't good. All of that could have been alleviated.
And at the end of the day, you can only control what you can control. So we can't control the market, right? But we can control how your plan responds to the market, and think intentionally about, okay, we know that the market's going to go up, it's going to go down, right, Loren? We know that on every 5 to 6 years on average, we're going to see a recession type of environment. Let's build a plan that's able to withstand that, because we know it's going to happen, right? And let's control those types of variables that we can control. I mean, all of us played sports here at one point, and that's always something I can remember the coaches saying, like, control what you can control.
Yeah.
You can't always worry about some of these other outside noise things that are going on. So let's focus on your plan. Let's focus on the strategies that we're implementing. And with that, you'll have a lot of confidence.
That's exactly right. And the good news is you can control way more than you think when it comes to your retirement plan.
I love the idea of making peace with your money worries. And one thing I do know is that ignoring the problem will not help you make peace. So taking that first step, that's a big part of it. You heard Loren say it. Here's an opportunity. It's a 15-minute retirement checkup call. This could be the first step you need. Go to merkleretire.com. You can schedule your 15-minute retirement checkup call today. There is a link to our 15-minute retirement checkup call in the show notes. This has been Retiring Today, and we thank you for listening. Merkle Retirement Planning is an independent financial services firm helping individuals create retirement strategies using a variety of investments and insurance products to custom suit their goals and objectives. Any information discussed in these shows is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as investment, tax, or legal advice. Investment advisory services are offered through Elite Retirement Planning LLC. Insurance services are offered through MRP Insurance LLC. All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I know there's a lot of fish to fry here, so let's get this one fried. Ready?